Hello, everybody. It's Lenny Murphy here with another one of our CEO series of interviews, particularly being a CEO in the era of COVID-19. Today, I'm joined by Dan Fitzgerald, President and CEO of InCrowd. Dan, how you doing?
I'm good, Lenny. Thank you. It's great to be with you today.
It's good to have you. So, where are you located, Dan, physically right now?
Yeah. So home is down in Southern Connecticut. So I'm sort of bunkered in the house, trying to do my part to stay safe and home shelter.
Right there with you, like everybody else, right?
And our business is based up outside of Boston, so that's where home office and headquarters are.
Okay. So, kind of full disclosure for our audience, I've known InCrowd, good Lord, probably since their inception, around 10 years ago. Met Janet and Diane, and it was really cool as they were experimenting with microsurveys, particularly within the healthcare industry. Of course, they were very helpful and a good partner to us as we launched IAX Health a few years ago. So they were central to that idea. So long history with InCrowd itself. Think the world of the company, and certainly think it's very cool when they brought you in, and I think the ladies exited, made a tight sum and went off to do other stuff. So
right.
Yeah. So that's very cool. Now, how did you? Let's actually start there. So were you brought in as the operator from private equity within that deal, or how did you get involved with InCrowd?
Yeah. So even a little bit more scripted than that. Sort of teamed up with private equity to pursue the opportunity together, and had become introduced to InCrowd a few years ago myself when I was part of the Reimagine Holdings company that eventually was sold to Dynata, and was teamed up with some of the investors, principal investors from the Reimagine group, John Almeida being one of them. And John and I sort of teamed up, and we're really excited about innovative businesses that are trying to do disruptive things and sort of changing the game in research. And we're very excited about sort of the opportunities within healthcare. So have always loved the business and the people and the opportunity. And long story short, we sort of consummated a deal back in August of last year, and I stepped in as CEO day to day. So that's when the new journey began, and Di and Janet moved to board seats. They're still very accessible and involved and passionate about the business and the people, and small shareholders.
Okay, very cool. You know what was always interesting about InCrowd was that Diane and Janet didn't come from the research space, right? They had healthcare backgrounds. I think actually Janet was a nurse, or both of them may have been nurses, if I recall correctly.
Well, Di's a PhD, so she's yeah.
Okay, but point was, part of that trend of seeing companies that folks from outside the research space identifying an opportunity to create a research solution.
Yeah.
Although they never thought of themselves that way originally, right? They were just trying to solve a problem to create an ability to get feedback from practitioners really quickly for pharma companies, et cetera, because they saw that as being the need. Pretty fair assessment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The origins of the company was providing sort of a fast and efficient way to get a couple of questions answered by frontline, healthcare providers, and has really sort of grown and mushroomed from that original concept. And today, we view ourselves as really the pioneer in on-demand microsurvey research for life sciences, and work with 40 of the top 100 pharmaceutical companies, the majority of the top 20, and are really doing sort of full life cycle work, meaningful research and insights across the whole life cycle of drug development.
So that is probably a really good segue, right, as we kind of move into the new reality. So you and I were chatting beforehand, and kind of contrary to what a lot of folks would have thought, that, oh no, we don't want to talk to doctors or nurses right now. They're really busy. You're actually finding an increased level of engagement from respondents.
Yeah.
They want to actively engage. Is that right?
Yeah, it is, and I would say that based on the nature of the work that we do, we were very early in early January interviewing healthcare providers both on the front line and not on the front line. Understanding sort of the preparedness, the readiness, their views and perspectives on COVID-19. And as part of that process, I'll say that we've done 3 waves now. The last wave was sort of towards the latter part of March. We've also done a patient wave, and we'll be doing a 4th wave with healthcare providers coming up here in the next week. And one of the questions we asked was whether they wanted to continue to receive micro surveys during this period of time. And 263 frontline healthcare providers responded to the study, and 97% of them communicated that they still wanted to participate in micro surveys. So, huge, overwhelming, both closed-ended and open-ended feedback that essentially said, we feel we have a unique point of view, right? We have the expertise, we have the exposure. They really want a voice, and are quite passionate about that. It wasn't really questionable at all that they want to share, they want a voice, and yes, they are sensitive to. We'd like the questions and the interactions to be short and mobile and on the go and sensitive to our time and flexible, but but the feedback was really overwhelming. And really feel like this is their opportunity to share, valuable insights about what's happening.
It's very cool. Actually, I didn't know in those terms, but I've noticed, now that I think about it, just in my social network, Facebook friends, that several are nurses, et cetera, a decided increase in activity from them.
Yeah.
Really wanting to share, and of course, particularly on this topic, right? Kind of what they're experiencing, within their hospitals and what they're hearing within their network, et cetera, et cetera. So that, I didn't make that connection until just now, but it makes an awful lot of sense.
Yeah, one of the things, Lenny, that we'll do, I know we talked about this originally, is we'll provide sort of a link to all of the research that we've conducted, because there's just a tremendous amount of, I think, really interesting data to see the progression of their views and experiences over the last, month and a half or so to today. And that perspective is is really sort of unique and and valuable, I think, for everybody to hear and appreciate. Sure. And probably important to to acknowledge and say a little shout out to our healthcare providers and our first responders who are out there, really the soldiers of today, doing tremendous work. Caring for those that are sick and really supporting those that are in need. So, it's incredible the sacrifices and commitments that they have, as well as their sense of responsibility to share their points of view.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I've made a point lately of anybody, particularly healthcare providers, but even the DoorDash delivery or the clerk at the store, just to say thank you. Thank you for being, and doing that. My sister's actually, she's on day almost 3 weeks in ICU with COVID-19. And so I'm keenly aware of, what those folks are dealing with, just from as a family member of dealing with that, and grateful for everything they've done. So I hear that. So you're kind of in an interesting spot then of being able to get maybe an advanced view of how things are progressing. Is there anything that you've taken from the research that you've done and helped to shape your own strategies in adapting to the new scenario? Any just big ideas? Yeah,
no, I mean, that's, from the research itself and connecting it to, kind of running the business, I'd say one of the common themes and the common themes that run through, our data and insights industry broadly is just the importance of data and access to data and communication lines. So, I would say just like working with, the vertical industries that we support within the data and insights industries, staying close and getting to know your customers, whoever your customers are, and having ready access to that is critically important, right? To navigate through, changing times, make decisions. And so from a organizational standpoint, based on your question, I would tie that back to, that continues to be one of the critical kind of ingredients as we, kind of distribute out in a distributed workforce and work from home, to really have strong information flow and data analytics within your business, so you can, spot those trends and patterns and hopefully try to be a little bit ahead of what's happening, so you can respond quickly and not be, caught too off guard. I mean, it's it's incredible today that those that know me know that I value and appreciate vision and strategy and priorities and goal setting and measurements of success. And in today's world, planning is really it's really off balance, right? It's upside down. Planning today is really being prepared, to stay focused in the moment and tackle what's immediately in front of you. And yes, you need to plan and you need to have contingencies, but there's so much uncertainty out there. I don't think any of us can really anticipate all the behavioral changes that we'll be trying to, embrace and navigate through. But back to the central point here, data and communication and information flow, even if it's just among teams, is critical. And knowing InCrowd, Janet and Di built a very, very strong culture, a very empowered culture, one that takes strong, sense of responsibility for the work they're doing for their colleagues. And so we've been able to, I think, embrace that and continue to build on it as things are changing. And I would like to say that we're a good communicating company. But I think that's essential. And if you don't have some of those tools in place, or processes in place or connections in place, really that's something that needs to be at the very top of the list.
Yeah, agreed. We're lucky that probably last year, as my businesses all kind of spread out, right? I've got my fingers in lots of pies. The adapted Slack across the board for everybody, right? So we all use Slack. I've got like 4 different Slack accounts, and all tied to Google Drive, just to create that consistency. And so we were lucky to have all those things in place. Are you guys utilizing a similar system as Slack, or?
Exactly. Slack, we are a significant kind of Slack culture, Google Drive environment. So we've got that in common. And I'll give you some examples of things that I've observed, which I think there's a learning point here as well. So the Slack channels, there's functional Slack channels, there's kind of social Slack channels. And it happens to be a very important way that we celebrate the company's wins, share information amongst the cross-department teams, as well as, again, engage on a personal level and socially. And I'll tell you, one of the most incredible things I saw, and it might just seem simple, but on the very first day of work from home, one of our employees, and a management level employee, not an executive team member, so somebody that does sort of lead by example and a manager level within the organization, opened up a Parents Unite channel. And this individual has 4 young children. And so this channel was quickly adopted by 35 or 40 different employees within the company. And it was really about sort of the family dynamic, based on work from home. And you understand this as well as anybody, is this notion of balancing work and life and pulling double duty with the kids, and now schooling online and activities and splitting those responsibilities between, two working, parents. So, I didn't have to do anything there, right? That is the culture just, and I think what you find in environments like this too is that if you give people an opportunity to be empowered, you very quickly see the power of, teamwork and leadership emerge within your organization. And so in some respects, I have to encourage that and foster it, but also know when I just need to let things happen and let, kind of great employees do great things, and then applaud them.
Well, I think now I've noticed for myself every interaction I have with anybody feels more important now on a very personal level, right? It's emotionally, it's important. So last week we have a company-wide Green Book meeting, right, with everybody on video, and Lukash, our managing director, actually said, you know what, I just want to hear from each of you on how you're doing. So, and it became this therapy session, right? It was really very moving, right? To recognize a lot of folks were struggling, this having real challenges with this, and I was just so impressed that I wouldn't have necessarily, I'm more of a touchy-feely guy to begin with, but I wouldn't have necessarily gone that far. So I was really appreciative that Lukash said, we're not going to do all the business stuff. Let's just connect. Let's just talk as friends. And so you made me think about that with that idea of creating that channel for your team to talk about the struggles or wins of adapting, this whole process.
Yeah, no, it's really important. I think you're touching on, an aspect of something I've been thinking quite a bit about, right? It's one of the sort of the changes that is upon us is, in order to sort of continue to support the business, and our employees, right, and their families, you really have to get outside of the business and make sure that you're there and you understand what their reality is, because everyone's reality is a bit different, right? I've got employees that are isolated at home because they live by themselves. I've got others that are young with a roommate or a couple of roommates. I've got, couples that have, recently been married, right, and sort of are starting their journey together. And then, of course, families with lots of, activities and craziness and excitement around them. But the appreciation for stepping outside of business and getting closer to your people, where, kind of thinking about sort of early in my career, there were clear kind of lines of privacy and sensitivity where, you kind of, it wasn't necessarily all that appropriate, I think, to get too close at times. Obviously that's been changing for the last decade and for years, but I think it's even more important today, and I think that will be one of the byproducts moving forward. And so what I've been thinking about is, how do we provide some of the support on the mental health side of things, right? Whether it be counseling, whether it be services, to really sort of help provide some benefit outside of the work environment. Because anything that you can do to help your employees be the best version of themselves, is the right thing to do, but it's also going to pay dividends, for them as part of the business.
Yeah, totally agree. That's a good segue then into kind of the last topic of, what does the future look like? I've been thinking a lot about that. Obviously, because it helps keep me sane, right? I can't control so much of what's happening right this minute, and I can't control the future, but I can at least think about what that could look like and maybe try and help bring it to life in my own little way. And increasingly, it made me think about this. One of the big trends that I would expect to see is a focus on localization and community, right? and almost always supply chain, manufacturing, distribution centers, healthcare. I think our large distributed system is going to become a much more localized system in every way possible, and including that idea of our business being part of our family, almost, right? Being part of that support structure around that, and it just creates lots of interesting possibilities on how all that's going to play out. So there's my take. What do you think? Right? What's the future look like to you?
Yeah. Well, I would echo some of your thoughts and sentiments there. I do strongly believe, that there will be sort of a byproduct that, we're already seeing the power of the human spirit and the resiliency of our community, both nationally and globally. And I think crisis has a way of bringing people together, and I think that will persist. And whether I'm, I dare to dream, and I'm an optimist. I want that to happen. I would cherish that happening. So I think unity and patriotism, and I think a focus on that localized sort of element that you're describing, and ensuring that that America has the services and the goods and the distribution and the energy and the health services that we need first, and that will enable us to be a strong global partner and do great things and collaborate. But I think it begins there, and we've lost a little sight of that, over the last 10 years or so. So I think that's one byproduct. I think and how business and family come together. That's an interesting concept to really noodle on. I think the other side of this, from an economic or a business standpoint, is more opportunistic, in that I believe that when we go through crisis like this, whether it was the .com or whether it was the real estate crisis in 7 and 8, it has an effect of bringing a great deal of focus, right, to the business, and really sort of the need to really understand core competencies and what you're good at, and potentially this notion of specialization, right, which is kind of an interesting concept to think about as you describe, kind of supply chain and sort of this localization concept. But the embrace of technology and tools and how to drive, better productivity and throughput. It also sort of breaks down some of the resistance, if you will, to change and experimentation, because listen, we've already gone through it all. It also creates new, kind of vectors, if you will, in that all the standards and all the metrics and all the norms that we've sort of held so tightly have to be kind of reaffirmed and reestablished, and maybe those metrics look very different, when we go out and establish them post, this crisis. But I can't, as I said earlier, I can't anticipate all the behavioral changes that we'll have to respond to and react to. But it's kind of exciting to think that this type of opportunity is going to be there to potentially refocus and get better. Exciting, and I know we can do it, right? I know that we can do that.
Oh, that's great, Dan. And that actually, there's one last question. So I was on the call, the roundtable, CEO roundtable discussion we do Tuesday, and the difference between this week and last week. Last week was a little more of the, oh shit, kind of, how do we adapt? This week already there is decided change. We picked that up primarily from BB from Unilever of, okay, we now need to think about the future and what does that look like? And the same things that we were just chatting about. So clients are shifting their focus, not just to how do we adapt right now, but how do we adapt going forward? What does the future look like? What are these changes that are temporary? What are permanent? What are the values and behaviors and business models that are going to shift through this with a lot of optimism, right?
Yeah.
So everybody recognizing, as you just said, this is a paradigm shifter, right? This is a once in a century paradigm shifter, period. End of story. At least hopefully it's once in a century. I don't want to see this again in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's good, right? There's opportunities that are going to emerge from this that will be really interesting and hopefully really empowering for a lot of folks. Are you picking that up already within your clients? Are they navigating now from the oh crap to okay, what's next? Are you seeing that yet?
Yeah, that's a really good question in terms of whether we've seen that within sort of the client relationships, just yet. I would say that we probably haven't seen a lot of evidence that they are preparing for the future, because I do think that they're really sort of still in sort of react, diagnose, make decisions, evaluate again. What we are seeing within our vertical market, though, is continued demand for data and insights. And I think what we're starting to see is an understanding of the power of data and insights and what I would call client empowerment. So how can I pull some of these levers myself? How can I use tools, more efficiently myself, and maybe not be so reliant on, on sort of the consultative side of the house, which is certainly, a critical part. It's a critical part of our business. It's a critical part of most. But I would say the desire to have more control and more empowerment. That's the word I like to use. Clients want choices, and I think what they're really sort of starting to think about is how can I have maximum flexibility to do as much as I want to do, and then rely on others when I need to rely on others. And I think that pays very well for our industry as we've been on this journey of really pressing forward with technology and innovation and things like natural language processing and AI and machine learning. Those things I think are really going to be exciting areas for us as we get to the other side.
Yeah, that's great, Dan. I think you and I could probably chat about this stuff for hours, but our listeners may not want to tune in for that long. But this has been great. So thank you for sharing all of your insight and for your experience. You guys, you're part of being on the front lines yourselves with this, the soldiers right there, right, defending us. So thank you for the work that you guys have been doing to help, provide the support for these people through gathering their opinions. So it's appreciated.
Well, thank you, Lenny, for all that you do for the industry and the great work that you do as well. And it's delightful to be teaming up with you. And hopefully we shared some interesting perspectives. As I said, we'll give access to some of the research that we've done and provide an ability for anybody to reach out if anyone wants to network or collaborate. We've got to continue to do that. We didn't get a chance to talk much about that on this session, but we all need each other right now. So I'm here if anybody wants to talk, and look forward to turning the corner here very soon.
Thanks, Dan. You guys be well and stay safe.
Be well and stay safe. Same to you. Bye-bye.